Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is essentially an ancient blueprint for building a nation. We're going to see how one leader tackled a massive logistical nightmare, how to divide up an entire country. And you'll see how this ancient plan set the stage for a people's identity for centuries to come.
So, let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine you're in charge. You've just secured a brand new country. The fighting's over, peace has begun, but now you've got this monumental task. How in the world do you divide it all up fairly? Well, for the ancient Israelites gathered at a place called Shiloh, this wasn't just a hypothetical. They had the land, but what they did next would literally define their future as a nation. So, here's the core of the problem. You have 7 tribes, and none of them have any land. This was the huge, unfinished task staring their leader, Joshua, right in the face. He was looking at a nation that was, well, only half-baked. The land was technically theirs, sure, but for a huge chunk of the population, that victory felt pretty abstract. They were pretty much homeless inside their own homeland.
And we're not talking about a small group of people here. This was 7 entire tribes that had not yet received their inheritance, their slice of the pie. That's a massive population just stuck in limbo, waiting to find out where they belonged, where they could finally put down roots.
And man, you can just feel the urgency, frankly, the impatience in Joshua's voice here. How long will you wait? He's not just asking a question, right? He's throwing down a challenge. He's basically saying, this land is a gift. Yes, but it's also a responsibility. You have to get up and claim it. The time for sitting around was officially over.
So what do you do? In a situation this massive, with so much at stake? Well, Joshua's solution was absolutely ingenious. He didn't just grab a map and start drawing lines himself. No, instead, he created a system that was both incredibly practical and, at the same time, divinely guided. It was a methodical plan designed to make sure everything was fair for everyone.
And this is it, his 4-step plan. It's beautiful in its logic. First, appoint surveyors, and get this, 3 men from each of the 7 tribes, so everyone is represented. Their job? Go out and map the rest of the land. They had to write up a super detailed description, town by town, and chop the whole thing into 7 distinct portions. Only then, with all that hard data, all that groundwork done, were the descriptions brought back to be distributed by casting lots. That's a sacred ritual, meant to show the final decision was impartial, guided by a higher power. It's just a brilliant mix of human effort and deep faith.
Now, of course, you might be wondering about the other tribes. And yeah, there were some exceptions to this whole process. The Levites, for example, were the priestly tribe. They didn't get a chunk of land because their inheritance was their sacred service to the nation. And then you have the tribes of Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. They'd actually already gotten their land on the east side of the Jordan River, way back in Moses' time. So see, Joshua's plan took everyone into account. So the surveyors do their work, they come back to Shiloh, and the detailed descriptions of the land are all laid out. Joshua begins the ceremony, he casts the lots, and the very first one to be drawn, it reveals the inheritance for the tribe of Benjamin. And where Benjamin's land ended up is it's incredible. It shows you the strategic thinking behind this whole thing. Their territory wasn't some random patch of desert. No way. It was prime real estate, smack dab between the 2 most powerful groups, the tribes of Joseph up north and the incredibly strong tribe of Judah down south. Benjamin was the buffer zone, the connector, literally the heartland of this new nation. Okay, so we know who got the first piece of land, and we know why its location was so incredibly important. So now, let's actually pull out the map and see what this inheritance looked like on the ground. You know, the original text is crazy detailed, so let's just hit the highlights, the big picture. The northern border kicked off at the Jordan River and ran west, right past the famous city of Jericho and up into the hills. The western line headed south, but the southern border, that's really fascinating. It curves right past the Jebusite city, which, you guessed it, would later become Jerusalem before it hits the Dead Sea. And to the east, you couldn't ask for a better boundary, the Jordan River. And listen, this was not just a bunch of empty fields. The tribe of Benjamin inherited a territory that was already full of established towns. The record actually lists them in 2 groups. 12 towns over in the east, which included Jericho, and another 14 towns in the west and central regions, including that super strategic city, Jerusalem. This was a really substantial, well-developed piece of land. So here's the thing we really have to get. When the text uses the word inheritance, it means so much more than just property. This isn't like inheriting your grandpa's watch. This is a divinely appointed territory.
It's the physical space that is going to define this tribe's identity, secure its future, and lock in its place as a crucial part of the larger nation of Israel.
Okay, so we've seen the plan, we've seen the first piece fall into place for Benjamin, but why does any of this ancient surveying and lot casting really matter to us? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the real significance here.
Because this whole process, the surveying, the mapping, the casting of lots, it marks a huge turning point. This is the moment a wandering, nomadic people truly becomes a settled nation. Having your own land, clearly defined and divinely approved, becomes the absolute foundation of your national identity, your economy, your stability for all the generations to come.
And all of that leaves us with this final, big idea to chew on. This ancient story, it's not just about drawing lines on a map. It makes us ask a question that echoes all the way through history and is still so relevant today. What does it really mean for a people when their land and their very identity become one and the same?